Hey everybody, welcome back to the Sheepdog Project. Doc with you today, flying solo. Let's talk about what we got upcoming with Sheepdog Response. We have a level 1 and occupational level 1 Sheepdog course September 21st through the 23rd in Hoffman, North Carolina. If you are anywhere in the Carolina area, make sure you check that out. We're going to be in Palm Bay, Florida for an occupational level 1 and a SOTEC level 1. That's the Spectrum of Tactical Emergency Care. That is the trauma medical course that I run. That is going to be the October 8th through 11th dates and that's in Palm Bay, Florida. And coming up right before SHOT Show in early 2019, January 14th through the 20th, the entire Sheepdog crew is going to be in Las Vegas, Nevada for a SOTEC level 1 course, a Sheepdog level 1 course, an occupational level 1 course, and an occupational carbine course. And there might even be a jiu-jitsu seminar thrown in there just for shits and giggles. If that happens, I will let you know in advance. Make sure you go to sheepdogresponse.com and you sign up for a course near you. We look forward to seeing you there. So what I'm going to talk about today, folks, since it's just me, I get a lot of questions that have to do with diet, nutrition, exercise. What should I be doing about this, about that, lifestyle-wise? A reoccurring theme in here that comes up a lot is sleep. And not as much as it probably should, actually, because most people don't realize that that's the missing ingredient in their overall health that they're kind of skipping over. A lot of people out there are doing the right workout. They're trying to eat right. They're going to the range when they're supposed to. They're going to jiu-jitsu. They're doing their combatives. They're dry firing. They're doing everything they're supposed to be doing to be a good sheepdog, but they're not getting enough good sleep. And the fact of the matter is, if you're not getting good sleep, you're really pushing uphill. You're not doing everything that you could be doing, and you're actually negating some of the things you're doing to live right by not getting enough sleep. You're not getting that recovery. It's not when you're doing squats that you're building those muscles, that you're building bone density. It's not when you're on the mat that all that muscle memory is getting built and your brain is getting wired to do that sweep or to do that submission. It's when you're resting. It's when your body is at rest and other stimuli have been taken away. That's when your body recovers. That's when your cells grow. That's when your cells multiply, rather. That's when all the reparative things take place in your body to heal you, to make you more fit. Okay? That's when that's going on. So if you're cutting out the rest portion of it, the sleep portion of it, you're not maximizing your fitness, you're not maximizing your health, and you're not going to get better. In fact, you're going to feel yourself start getting worse. Imagine if you were in a sleep deficit, and I'm somebody who's been there several times in my life. In Ranger School, I would go days without sleeping. In Special Forces selection, the maximum sleep we got at any given night was 4 hours. And honestly, I think I was getting about 3 hours a night. Very rigorous physical activity in between. So my body was constantly breaking down that time. Anybody who's been through something similar can attest to the same. If you're not getting the sleep, you get the nutrition, right? You put the fuel back in, you put the building blocks back in, but you need that downtime. You got to shut everything down to build back up again. 1 in 4 people in the United States has some type of sleep difficulty. The fact that you can drive through town and see all these sleep study clinics, right? This wasn't something that we saw 20 years ago. Think of how many people you know who've been diagnosed with sleep apnea now that, before people didn't even necessarily know that that was a thing, right? Now, tons of people that we know have it. There's different types of sleep apnea, right? There's an obstructive sleep apnea. There's a central type of sleep apnea that has a little bit more to do with your nervous system. Some of this can be controlled by things like weight loss, some by appliances that you can place in your upper airway to help you move air better. Some you have to use a CPAP machine, right? So it depends on the person. Going and getting one of these sleep studies is what a lot of people have had to resort to really figure out what's wrong with their sleep. I've heard a lot of actually jokes about this, that not sleeping well really is kind of a first world problem. And to an extent it is. We do find that in the developed world, more people have trouble sleeping. We've also found that people who have higher IQ and who are more successful in life are actually more likely to have difficulty sleeping. I don't know exactly what that says about us on a social and psychological level, but we do know that those things are true, and the numbers certainly support it. This is something that's affected me my entire life. I've always had difficulty sleeping, whether it was difficulty falling asleep or difficulty staying asleep. This has been compounded over the years because of, especially in the military, deploying, going on reverse cycle where I sleep during the day and was up doing missions at night, changing time zones frequently, both in the military and afterwards. When I was shooting for the History Channel, traveling across multiple time zones, having to get up the next morning and shoot and maybe get on a plane that afternoon, fly to another time zone and be shooting again the next day. This is something that I've battled with for a very, very, very long time. And I've had multiple sleep studies done, and I have been diagnosed with sleep apnea. I do wear a CPAP to sleep. But I've also, in addition to that hasn't been enough for me in kind of cracking the code and how to sleep properly. So over time, I've had to come up with a lot of things on my own, research a lot of things on my own. Some of this is common sense stuff. Some of it is things that you can find anywhere on the internet, that any physician that you talk to or any provider that you talk to is going to tell you the same general habits about what we call sleep hygiene. But I'm just going to go through some things that maybe not everybody knows that have helped me and that many experts agree do work. Some of this is from my own recipe book. Some of it is I'm standing on the shoulders of giants and I've gotten the knowledge from them. But I'm going to share it all with you for what it's worth, because this has been a lifelong struggle with me and has gotten worse as I've gotten older. Maybe it's something that can help you as well. One more thing that I want to talk about when it comes to general health before I launch into this. If you're not sleeping right, your cortisol levels are up. And if your cortisol levels are up, that's going to affect you in a lot of ways. You're going to tend to put on and retain more body fat. Okay, you're going to have less lean muscle. This is going to affect your libido, whether you're male or female. We also know that high cortisol counts in men will affect their sperm counts. Basically, if you're just walking around feeling irritable and tired and just generally lousy all the time, those are symptoms that kind of generally go along with having a high cortisol count. It's considered a stress hormone. So what that is you're not getting enough sleep. So your body is bumping up your cortisol to kind of compensate for that. It's kind of to give you a jolt, and it's giving you that kind of irritable feeling. Also, if you're not getting enough sleep, nighttime when you're asleep, that's when you get your bursts of human growth hormone, and that's when you're building stuff up. If you're denying that good restful sleep, you're not going to get those. So that's all I'm going to talk. I'm going to try to stay away from most of the physiology aspect of it and just talk about some general stuff that you need to do for sleep hygiene, and we're going to start that now. So when I think about sleep and I think about sleep hygiene, I don't think about it starting as I'm getting into bed that night. I think about it in the morning when I get up. Think about it, the sleep hygiene starts the morning before. And what I mean by that is when your alarm goes off on Monday morning, it's too late to worry about whether or not you got any good sleep Sunday night. Okay, that bullet is out of the gun, as they say. It's not time to look back and mope to the bathroom thinking, oh my God, I didn't get any sleep last night. I tossed and turned, and oh, this is the end of the world. And what am I going to do? And maybe I can get a nap later on. And how much caffeine am I going to need to drink? And oh, this is just awful. And I can't wait to get home tonight. Don't be looking back and perseverating on the sleep you didn't get. Get up, shake it off. You're going to have to face that day no matter what. Okay. So when the alarm goes off, get up. Don't hit a snooze button. I'm never an advocate for hitting a snooze button, okay? You set that alarm for a reason. You need to get up and you need to probably get to work. So get up and get to work. And I'm not saying that there aren't times that when your body needs more sleep, you're not going to lay there. But certainly if it's a day you set an alarm and you've got something to get up for, honestly, do you really think that a 4-minute or 5-minute, whatever it is, snooze button is going to make you feel well rested? It's not, let's be honest. So get up, brush your teeth, take a shower, wash your face, get some breakfast, get some coffee, or go do your workout, whatever it is you're going to do, but get up. Don't waste energy looking back on that bad night's sleep. It's not going to serve anything. So let's talk about that first cup of coffee, which in my opinion really should be that only cup of coffee. You need to be using caffeine sparingly, okay? I drink a cup of coffee every day. I cannot remember a day in recent memory. I think the last time that I can definitely remember not having coffee was when I was in SEER school, so I wasn't allowed to. So I drink coffee every day. I'm an advocate of drinking coffee. I like coffee, but you need to drink it sparingly. If you're a person who typically has trouble sleeping, I don't care how tired you are in the afternoon, I don't want you drinking any coffee after 2 p.m. I say typically 1 cup, but we'll say 16 ounces. So, not just a little small 8-ounce cup. You can have up to 16 ounces of coffee, but that needs to be in the first part of the day. Definitely nothing after 2 p.m. And that really applies to all caffeinated beverages. So I've almost completely sworn off of soda, and I'm somebody who's been drinking Diet Coke most of his adult life. I drink sparkling water now, which doesn't have any caffeine. It's a lot healthier for you. It's better for you overall. If you're a person who likes sodas, I would say switch to something like that, or drink something that is caffeine-free. Even if you can't give up the soda pop, give up the caffeine. Drink a caffeine-free Diet Coke after 2 o'clock. You definitely at your dinner meal, you shouldn't be drinking any type of carbonated or caffeinated beverage of any kind, even afterwards. And you might make an exception to that. You're going out on a Friday or Saturday night, going out for a nice dinner with friends, where maybe later you're going to be going to some type of event somewhere, or going to a cigar bar later on, and you might have a small cup of coffee, a cappuccino or something after dinner. That's a completely different animal. That's not what I'm talking about. But on a day-to-day basis, no caffeine after 2 p.m. Avoid naps. And I'm a little bit of a hypocrite in this because I'm a big fan of the Green Beret Power Nap. Naps can be great. If you're in a situation where you're on some type of weird cycle and you're not able to get that sleep in, I've been in situations, especially on deployment, where you end up grabbing naps. Trying to sleep on board a ship, going around the Mediterranean, getting up at weird hours to make sure I make it to the gym before the entire ship is in the gym so I can get my workout in, coming back, getting breakfast, taking a little mid-morning nap. You should avoid naps. If you're serially not getting enough sleep at night, you need to power through at least one day to avoid that nap. If you absolutely find that you have to do it, you need to nap for no more than an hour. And again, that needs to be nothing definitely after about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The later that you nap, the more that's going to affect your ability to fall asleep that night. And there's going to be kind of one exception to that I'm going to talk about a little bit later on when we talk about shift work. But by and large, you need to avoid those naps. You need to power through it. Little story, friend of mine that I was in the Ranger Battalion with, we got out of battalion about the same time. He went to work for UPS, and he was doing night shift, doing next day air stuff for UPS, and then he was also working in an Army surplus store during the day. And basically, he was getting 3 blocks of 3 hours to sleep that he had dispersed throughout the day. He'd get home from UPS, he'd sleep for 3 hours. He'd go to work at the store, he'd come home, he'd sleep 3 hours. He'd go get something, he'd come back, he'd sleep 3 hours again. It was really weird. The guy was tired all the time. So again, bottom line, avoid naps. Exercise. So again, we're still talking about the morning. I typically do my heavy cardio, my heaviest workouts in the morning. Evenings are typically for fighting, so that's when I'm going to jiu-jitsu or I'm going to do some boxing or some Muay Thai. But my heaviest exercise, especially my heavy cardio, I tend to do in the morning. People who exercise sleep better, okay? You're breaking your body down, so your body is going to signal you that it needs to get that sleep. It's going to crave that sleep. It's going to want it for that rebuilding time. So if you exercise, then your body's going to want to be rewarded with that sleep later. People that exercise sleep better. It's a proven fact. It's pretty important that you not do any extremely strenuous exercise within about an hour or two of trying to go to sleep. When I was in North Carolina and all of my striking classes were in the evenings, and I was working really weird hospital hours at the time. So I would basically go to my striking class, get something to eat on the way home, and then come home, lay down, and try to go to sleep. And this was after I'd been fighting multiple rounds. My heart rate was still kind of up. Still, fresh bruises on my forehead from where I'd gotten punched. That was not working out for me. So I was having a lot of trouble falling asleep. Don't do any extremely strenuous exercise within a couple hours of trying to sleep, but definitely have an exercise routine. You're going to sleep better. Speaking of things you need to avoid within a few hours of trying to get to sleep, alcohol. You need to avoid alcohol within about 4 hours of sleep, okay? Some people feel like, I'm going to have a glass of wine, I'm going to sleep better. Certainly for some people that's the case. I wouldn't advise you to make that a crutch all the time that you do. You definitely don't want to make that a habit. Alcohol, among other things, alcohol is a diuretic, which means it's going to activate your kidneys more. You're going to be up in the night going to the bathroom. That's going to disrupt you from having a full night's sleep, whether it helped you fall asleep or not. And just generally, people do not get the quality sleep with alcohol in their system that they will get if they don't have alcohol in their system. Yes, you're drowsy. Yes, you're kind of feeling relaxed, but that's a little bit of a false sense of security when it comes to falling asleep, because your brain is not getting in the right pattern that it needs to for you to get that truly restful sleep. I mean, think about what it feels like when you wake up hungover. A lot of that has to do with the dehydration of your system, of course, but also for the fact that you're just not sleeping well when you're sleeping off that alcohol. So a little bit in moderation. I'm not going to say you can't have a glass of wine with dinner, but generally avoiding alcohol. If you're drinking alcohol to the point that you're feeling its effects within 4 hours of sleep, that's going to affect the way you sleep. All right, so we've moved through the morning, through the afternoon. We're into the evening now, and we're talking specifically about as you approach the time that you're going to go to bed. My advice to you is don't go to bed hungry. If you go to bed hungry, you're going to be thinking about being hungry. You're not going to be in a position where you can go into that restful sleep mode. But do not eat a huge meal. You definitely don't want to eat a huge meal. You don't want to go to bed full, right? That's going to affect how you sleep. That's going to affect how you digest. That might be something you can get away with if you're a little bit younger, but as you get older, it gets harder and harder to do. I know if I eat anything of any substance at all within about an hour of sleep at this point, I lay down and I start getting heartburn. And then I'm up, I'm chewing some Tums because of that. So you do not want to eat a huge meal, especially a big carbohydrate load within a couple hours of going to sleep. You definitely don't want to do that. So my advice is a light snack, something that's fairly high in protein. I like almond butter within about 30 to 45 minutes of going to bed. I'll have a tablespoon of almond butter and drink a little bit of carbonated water or some regular water right about the time that I'm taking my night regimen and stuff that I take right before I go to sleep. I take the Onnit human optimization packs, so I take those in the evening, and then I also have some additional things that I add to that I'm going to talk about later that help me sleep. But you don't want to eat a big meal. So like I say, a tablespoon of almond butter. You also want to avoid too much liquid, especially if I'm a 52-year-old guy. If I drink a full bottle of water right before bed, I'm going to be up and down all night long. So that's something you want to avoid. You want to get into that restful sleep mode. You want to stay there. So avoid large quantities of food or liquids right before going to bed. Discipline yourself about going to bed earlier. And this was the big struggle that I had, especially in my 20s, is I wanted to stay up and watch Letterman or whatever it might be, and then you pay for it the next morning. Jerry Seinfeld has a whole comedy routine on this where he talks about, when it's nighttime, hey, you're night guy. Night guy doesn't have to get up in the morning. That's morning guy's problem. And that's not night guy's problem. So night guy stays up. Then morning guy gets up and morning guy blames night guy. Don't be night guy. Be disciplined about it. Tell yourself you're going to go to bed earlier. A lot of people that are really successful are very, very disciplined about their sleep routine and about going to bed at a specific time. Early to bed and early to rise. right? Makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise, and a woman healthy, wealthy, and wise. Tim, that's one of the first things that I found out about him in talking to him about his daily routine is that he's very disciplined about going to bed early. The Tim Kennedy household shuts down early, and it's not just because they've got a toddler in the house. They go to bed early because that's what Tim knows that he needs to do to rebuild, and that's what you need to do. Discipline yourself to go to bed. If you're having a lot of trouble, tell yourself that you're just going to try to go to bed an hour earlier. Now, there's a lot of debate about this because a lot of people say, well, but then if you lay down and if you're there for 20 minutes and you're not falling asleep, you should get up and do something else. There's a little bit to that. That's not what has worked for me. Typically, what has worked for me is deciding I'm going to go to bed earlier. I'm going to turn off the stimuli, which I'm going to talk about in a second, and I'm going to make myself get into bed. I'm not going to read. I'm not going to mess around, surf the internet, watch TV. I'm going to set a hard time that everything goes off and I go to bed. So on that subject of reducing stimulus, so here's what you need to do. You need to turn off the TV. You need to turn off your tablet, your phone, your computer. You don't need to be answering emails right before you go to bed, okay? If you're answering a bunch of work emails right before you go to bed, what frame of mind is that putting you in? Those are still going to be there in the morning. If it's 8, 9 o'clock at night, honestly, are you sending an email that anybody's going to take action on that night? No, of course not. From dinner time on, I do not check emails, period. Nobody should be in the office at that point. So nobody's sending you anything from work. The only time that there was ever an exception to that is when I was the chief of emergency medicine before I retired out of Fort Hood. I would get legitimate, hey, this has to be done by tomorrow work emails at 6 and 7 o'clock at night, which I absolutely hated. Don't check any emails, period, from dinner time on. Once you go in and sit down, number one, this is a whole nother podcast, but when you go to dinner with your family, none of your devices should be going in there with you because you should be interacting with one another. But that should be, dinner's on the table. Those should be the words that signify that I'm done with emails for the day. Don't be checking them right before you go to bed. They're just going to aggravate you. If you do, for some reason, you have to use a computer, you have to use your phone, out of necessity, and I recognize that some people are in that position, or maybe you're reading a book on your tablet, not right when you're getting in bed, but maybe after dinner as you're sitting down quietly trying to relax. Pretty much all the devices that are out there have a setting that is going to change to what we call warmer lighting. In other words, there's going to be less blue spectrum in the lighting and more red spectrum in the lighting. You can set that in your settings. I know all Apple devices have it, and I'm assuming pretty much everything out there does now. So that as night is coming on, it's going to change that spectrum. Less blue, more red. Think about what that's going to do to your brain. And we're going to talk more about a substance called melatonin. But when your body is aware of daylight, it's because it's seeing things like a lot of natural light, a lot of sunlight, blue sky, things that tell your brain that it's daylight. It's time to be up. It's time to be moving. It's time to be working. As the sun sets, the hues and the spectrum change, and it tells your body that it's nighttime, that now's the time to rest, now's the time to sleep. We have interrupted that with all these devices because we are putting high intensity light, a lot of it on that blue spectrum, directly into our eyes, directly into our brain, where that's being processed as it's still time to be awake. So set your devices, if they have some type of evening mode, some type of, whatever they call it for that particular brand, you need to figure out what it is and set that device to do it if you have to use it. My advice is to avoid it altogether, but if you have to use that device, set it to change the spectrum as it gets later. And it's going to have an effect on a level you're not even conscious of. Okay? Definitely worth it. Start decreasing the lighting in your house. Okay, dinner's over. The dishes have been collected. They've been put in the dishwasher. Turn off the kitchen light. Turn off the dining room light. You don't have to have a lot of massive overhead lights going on in the living room while you're sitting entertaining the kids or watching TV or whatever it might be as you're kind of winding down that evening. You should be winding down the house lights all together. So it should be darker inside your house as well. This is going to help the natural release, again, of that chemical called melatonin, which is what your body makes to basically tell you that it's nighttime. Personal hygiene before going to sleep is very important. If you think about how difficult it is to sleep with a piece of chicken stuck in your teeth, or just feeling kind of grimy, you got a sweat on earlier in the day and you got kind of that salt rub, going in your armpits or wherever it is. Clean yourself up. If you're not going to take a full shower, we're going to wash your face, brush your teeth, get into something comfortable. Don't just flop down in the same sweaty t-shirt and underwear that you've had on under your uniform, under your scrubs, whatever it might be. Clean yourself up. All right. Do some good hygiene. Feel comfortable, because feeling comfortable is a major factor in getting comfortable sleep. So you've cleaned yourself up. You've put something comfortable on, whatever it is you sleep in, assuming that you have something that you do sleep in. Now you're going to get into bed. So let's talk about your bed. Let's talk about your sleeping area. First and foremost, and everything that you will ever read on sleep hygiene agrees that your bed is for two things and two things only. It's for sleep and being intimate with your partner. That's what a bed is for. It is not a place to read. It is not a place to eat. It is not a place to play board games. It is not a place to surf the internet or your phone or watch Netflix. Okay? We're all guilty of this. Pretty much every master bedroom has a TV in it. All right? We're all guilty of that. But that's not what it's for, and that's not what we should be doing. Your body needs to get used to the fact that if I'm in bed, this is either time for intimacy or this is time for sleep. If your brain and body start to associate that bed with other activities, it does not associate it as a place of restful sleep, and it's going to interfere with your ability to do so. It seems odd, I know, but it is true. And think about it. What is if you have a bed for your dog, does your dog ever go and eat in the dog bed? No. Your dog goes to sleep in the dog bed. Even your dog knows this. So you should know this too. The bed is a place to sleep, or it's a place for intimacy, nothing else. On the subject of the bed, get a good mattress. All right. It's your mattress should be replaced depending on the mattress, every 5 to 8 years or so. You'd be shocked if you knew how much dried up human skin cells end up in your mattress, and dust mites and everything else. Get a good mattress. Get a firm mattress. It shouldn't creak. It shouldn't have a soft spot. Shouldn't make a funny noise when you get off on the side. Get a good mattress that you're comfortable with. I'm not saying you have to go out and spend an exorbitant amount of money on these high-speed adjustable mattresses. I happen to have one. I like it. I do have a different sleep number than my wife does. I like the bed a little bit firmer. The advantage of that is that when one of you rolls over in the night, it's not transmitted to the other side, but I'm not saying you necessarily have to do that. Just a good mattress. I think what most people find is they actually need a firmer mattress than they think they do. The best way to go about it is probably to get a firm mattress with a mattress cover that has a spongy top to it. So you do have a little bit of soft cushion with something pretty firm underneath. And don't forget the box spring too. The box spring needs to be firm, it needs to be sturdy, and it needs to give you good support. If it's not getting you good support, you're not going to get good sleep. Good sheets. We'll spend all kinds of money on the clothes that we wear. We'll spend all kinds of money on watches, on the car that we drive, and we go to Target and we buy $18 sheets. You spend almost half of your life in that bed. All right, pony up a little bit of extra money and buy some decent sheets. That's probably even more important than getting the top of the line mattress, is getting some decent sheets. And I'm not going to tell you what that means. I'm not going to tell you how much you should spend or what the thread count should be. There's plenty of different kinds out there. I bought the Boll and Branch because I heard Ben Shapiro talking about them on his show. I'm a firm believer in them. But there's plenty other ones out there that are probably just as good. Just get good sheets that are comfortable. They shouldn't feel like sandpaper. They shouldn't feel like clingy, like a tarp, like you're rolling around in a tarp or something like that. Get something that breathes, something that's comfortable. Spend a little bit of money. Comfortable pillow, man. Don't be cheap when it comes to your pillow. So I've got a lot of neck issues now. Get something that supports your neck properly, supports your head properly, depending on how you like to sleep, whether you're a back sleeper or a side sleeper. I'm a side sleeper. I think side sleeping for a lot of people is the way to go. A lot of times that involves using actually two pillows, so one that your head is on, one that you maybe hold up into your body and stays between your knees to keep you from rolling over onto your stomach. Whatever that is for you, get a comfortable pillow. Again, sheets and pillow. If you're gonna cut anywhere in your budget, don't cut there. I mean, these are the things that are going to help you get a restful night's sleep. So, if you got the sheet and you got the pillow down, that's the 90% solution. And then the other 10% is probably the mattress. Let's talk about the rest of your sleep space. So something that I figured out that I needed working a lot of shift work in the emergency room was blackout curtains. And I actually am a fan of double blackout curtains. So I have a blackout shade and then blackout curtains. So a pull down shade and then blackout curtains on top of that. So basically, even when the sun's up, it's like a cave in my bedroom. And that's what you want. You want it to be as dark as possible. Depending on where you live, and actually when I got mine for the first time was when I lived in an apartment in Fayetteville, and there was a street light right outside of my window. And just regular stock curtains, stock blinds were not cutting it. So I got double blackouts for that. And then I found that also they helped me when I was sleeping during the day. I didn't have to sleep with a sleep mask on anymore, which works, and I've used them on deployment, I've used them on planes, but a sleep mask on a day-to-day basis is just more than I want to deal with. I'm already dealing with a CPAP. I don't want to deal with a sleep mask too. So blackout shade and a blackout curtain. Go to any place that sells blinds and curtains and tell them specifically that that's what you want. And say, look, I don't want any light getting in at all. You will be so glad that you did. And there's also a certain degree, because of how thick they are, there's a certain degree of soundproofing that goes along with them as well, which I found additionally to be helpful. So let's talk about sound. I sleep with a white noise machine. You can get them on Amazon. You can get them just about anywhere. You can get them at Bed Bath & Beyond. In the absence of that, when I'm traveling on the road, I have a white noise app on my phone that I use. And the big reason for me doing this is I noticed that I tended to sleep really well when I was flying on aircraft. That steady hum of that aircraft engine and the wind going past the fuselage just really seemed to help me sleep. And the way that I duplicated that was with the white noise machine. And especially if you live in an apartment complex, people coming and going, traffic, if you live in an urban area, this is something you're really going to need to do. Again, in a pinch, you can put earplugs in, but they fall out in the middle of the night. They're not really comfortable. If you do have to get up in the middle of the night and respond to a situation, you don't really want to be fumbling with earplugs. Although, I guess if you had to cut loose with your 12 gauge down the hallway and you already had your earplugs in, that would be an advantage. So that's another thing in and of itself. But it's a whole other conversation. Get a white noise machine of some kind or put an app on your phone. To me, I think the white noise machine is the way to go. Or just run a fan. If you're somebody that you already want to do something to kind of keep your room at a better temperature with some air circulating, run a fan. Something that's going to give you that steady, rhythmic, machine-like noise in the background that's going to help you sleep. So you've done all that. You've prepared your sleeping area. You're getting into bed. The lights are out. Now, the important thing is you really need to relax your mind. You don't need to be thinking about what you got to do in the morning. You don't need to be thinking about that meeting that's coming up or that report that's due. And I know this is easier said than done. We live in a pretty dynamic society, but try to just purge all that out of your mind. And don't try to sleep. I've seen a lot of people that talk about the problems that they have with sleeping, and they're literally, what they're describing to me is they are trying to sleep. They're giving it 100% effort. Just like they give 100% effort in the gym, they're giving 100% effort trying to go to sleep. You're not going to fall asleep trying to sleep, all right? You need to relax. You need to let it go. You need to put yourself on another plane that's not even what you're thinking about, and you're going to fall asleep. Don't put too much effort into it. Just leave the previous day behind. Don't look forward to what's coming the next day. Constantly listen to the sound of your breathing. Listen to the sound of that white noise machine. Put yourself in the moment and relax. There are different techniques out there where people try to do this thing, or I'm going to relaxing my feet. Like now I'm relaxing my legs below the knees. None of those have ever worked for me. None of those have ever worked for me. Yeah, I kind of feel it happening as it happens, and I feel more relaxed overall, but none of that has ever helped me go to sleep. It might be something that works for you. The traditional advice is once you lay down, you give yourself 20 or 30 minutes to fall asleep. And I said this earlier. And then if you don't get out of sleep, you need to get out of bed and you need to go somewhere else because you're in the bed, but you're not sleeping. You need to associate that not sleeping activity that you're going to do with somewhere else. So get up, go somewhere else, do something, read something, do whatever it is, and then come back when you're tired. I'm not a fan of doing this, and here's why. Because I've already got all the lights out, I've reduced the stimulus, and now if I get up and do something, now I've turned lights on. Now I've increased stimulus again. Now whatever natural melatonin that I'm releasing, if I'm turning lights on, I'm now nullifying that. I tend to just lay there and just go with it. If I haven't fallen asleep in 20 minutes, I just don't worry about it. I just lay there. I don't go, oh my God, I've been here for 20 minutes, I'm not falling asleep. Now I'm perseverating on that. No, I just let it go. And here's something that goes along with that. I don't have any type of visible clock in my sleeping space. So I don't even know that I've been there for 20 minutes. I have no idea how long I've been there. I don't keep a visible clock anywhere. I don't want to, if I get up in the middle of the night to get a drink of water or to go to the restroom, I don't want to see that clock and know that I've only got 2 hours left or that, excuse me, or that I've only been asleep for an hour. I don't want to know that. As soon as you know that, your brain resets. It's like you essentially start at zero again. Let me give you an example. If you're on a treadmill or you're on a stationary bike, how many of you do this little trick where you'll cover up the clock? Like you say, I'm gonna do 30 minutes on the treadmill, but I'm gonna cover the clock because I don't want to know. I want it to be this pleasant surprise when it beeps and starts to power down that I got there without knowing it. I kind of think of sleeping and laying in bed the same way. I don't want to have that running clock because every time I look over at the clock, oh my God, I've been here 45 minutes now. I've been laying here and I haven't fallen asleep yet. I lay there for a little while longer. Oh, 5 more minutes have gone by. Now, that's just going to be aggravating. So don't do that. Have no visible clock anywhere. What I do is if I have to get up to an alarm, I set the alarm on my phone. I put my phone face down. So if a text pops up or something like that, I don't see it. I'm still going to hear the alarm when it goes off. And I don't have to see the numbers on that clock each and every time I roll over. I don't want to know. So now I'm going to talk about, excuse me, I got to get a little drink here. Hold on. So now I'm going to talk about something specifically that I do that's unique to me in helping myself sleep. Because for years, my biggest issue was always the falling asleep, that I would lay there and not be able to fall asleep. So I had to come up with some techniques to help get into sleep mode and fall into deep sleep. We've all been in that kind of gray zone where you're not quite all the way asleep and you're not quite awake. And you're in that, there's a zone in there that is known as hypnagogia. Okay, when you're in this zone of hypnagogia, you're kind of hallucinating. That's when you tend to have those weird, I just fell off of a wall, and then you wake up with that, but you weren't quite asleep, but you felt like you were falling. That's when you're in that hypnagogia area. You're right on the cusp of completely falling asleep. If you've ever thought about what your brain is like, what your brain activity is like when you're in that zone, it's very random. A lot of random kind of flashing of images moving in and out. It's not organized at all. It's very disorganized. I figured out that just for me, that disorganization of thought is something that can help me push into that zone and fall asleep. So when I'm laying there, I don't, and by the way, I looked specifically for this podcast, I looked up counting sheep. And they've actually done scientific studies and they found that counting sheep actually makes you stay awake longer. And that's probably because it's very linear and very organized. You're counting, okay? If you are thinking of anything that is organized and basically requires higher thought or attention, whether it's math problems, balancing your checkbook, passages in a book, scenes from a movie that you saw, that's all organized thought. That's going to engage the higher learning centers, the higher cognitive centers of your brain, keep you engaged and keep you awake. So the exercise that I started to do was this. If you close your eyes, you'll see kind of a shower of lights that occurs basically inside your eyelids. Those are called phosphenes. So you'll see these little lights that move. They're smooth edged. Looks almost like a lava lamp, kind of the way they move and morph. Close your eyes and look at those when you're laying there trying to go to sleep. And try to nudge them. Just try to manipulate them a little bit with your mind. Not to form, any specific shape or anything like that, but just push them a little bit this way and that way. And you make it a little bit of a game. It's almost like you're playing this video game inside your eyelids where you're pushing these amorphous shapes around and just kind of seeing what they'll do. It's almost like you're stirring something on the surface of water. Just doing that, I find incredibly relaxing. And I found that it ties up my brain in such a way that it puts me into that plane where I can fall asleep. Another exercise that I do is I will flash random images through my mind, and I try to keep them devoid of too much action, but with a little bit of movement. And what I mean by that is I'll flash for no more than a couple of seconds. I won't concentrate on any one image because I don't want to do anything that evokes concentration, starts to pull out memories that I then concentrate on even more. I just want to flash these little images very, very briefly, 3 to 5 seconds. I'll flash the image of, say, a sand dune with a wind lightly blowing sand over it, a creek flowing in front of me, some lightly falling snow on a pine tree, a field of wheat blowing gently in the wind, some clouds moving by. I'll just keep flashing images like that. And I'm not really concentrating on them. I'm just kind of letting that next image pop into my head. I'm not doing anything with cars going by or planes flying past or animals running through it. I don't want anything with too much energy or action. Just light movement. I keep the colors generally subdued, nothing bright, like bright sunlight shining in my face. Listening to this, that probably sounds really, really strange to you. But I noticed that these were the type of images when I was in that state of hypnagogia, not quite asleep, not quite awake. Those were the type of images that, as I would startle back awake, that were kind of stuck in my head. These kind of random images were the last thing that I remembered. So I just started doing that purposefully and then letting it flow on its own, let it kind of taking up for itself without me directing it. And since I've started doing that, I have a lot easier time falling asleep. So give it a try. It might not work for you. It might sound like complete hooey, but I can tell you from my point of view, it really put me in that meditative frame of mind where I was kind of devoid of concentration and apart from myself, and it really helped me fall asleep. So give it a try. See if it works for you. If nothing else, just close your eyes. And again, those amorphous lava lamp images on the inside of your eyelids, just watch them, play with them, see what they do. If you do wake up in the night and you've got to use the bathroom or get a drink of water or whatever it is, again, don't look at a clock. Okay, you're sabotaging yourself if you look at a clock. I mean, what good does it do you to tell you? If you've only got 45 minutes to sleep, do you really want to know that? That's going to affect your ability to fall back asleep again. If you've got 5-6 more hours to sleep, do you really want to know that? Again, what are you going to do with the information? If you're not going to do anything with it, then why do you need it? All it's going to do is put a hard reset in your brain, and you don't want that. I do advise that people use some type of nightlight, not in their sleeping space, but in the bathroom, so you can find your way. No, I mean, nothing is worse for a night's sleep than a stub toe. or a bang knee in the middle of the night. There's absolutely nothing worse. You don't want to be fumbling around. You don't want to be tripping over a pair of dirty socks. But you also don't want to be completely turning lights on because, again, your brain is in that mode where it's nighttime. I'm sleeping. If light is hitting your retina and that information is getting transferred to your brain starts to think that it's time to wake up, right? So, I mean, what do we do when we're living in areas where we don't see the light of day? You're prisoners in a prison or troops living in a barracks. We flip all those fluorescent lights on, right? We do the same thing in the hospital, right? Lights come up in the hospital during the day because we want everybody, all the patients that are in the ICU, we want them on a good day-night schedule. So limit the amount of light that you're going to see in the night if you have to get up for some reason or another. You're going to find that makes a huge impact on your ability when you go back to sleep to fall back asleep. Let's see what else I got here. When the alarm goes off in the morning, again, and I talked about this when I talked about starting your day off. The alarm goes off, you get up. And when you get up, you do maximize that light. Okay, that's when the curtains come open. That's when the lights come on. Because now you're telling your brain that it's time to get up. Okay, you're going to be shocked at how much natural sunlight just hitting your retina is going to have a similar effect to drinking that first cup of coffee. Your brain is going to know that it's time to get up. So get up, take a shower, wash your face, whatever it is, and get some natural light. Open up those curtains, turn the lights in the house on, turn some music on, the news, whatever it might be. Start stimulating yourself because it's time to get back in the game. This is a side note. This doesn't just have to do with sleep hygiene, but specifically with overall health. First thing I do when I get up is I rotate to a sitting position with my feet on the ground. And on the nightstand, I have a 16-ounce bottle of water. And the first thing I do before I even stand up is I drink 16 ounces of water. I've been doing that for about 6 to 8 months. And since I started doing that, I feel so much better throughout the day. Because when you first wake up in the morning, you're in a deficit. You're in a fluid deficit. You restricted yourself a little bit before you went to bed. And even if you didn't get up in the night to go to the bathroom, it's during the night that a lot of the fluid that you have in your vascular space is going into the cellular space. You've always heard this, right? You're taller when you wake up in the morning. Well, the reason that is throughout the day, you compress the discs between the vertebrae and your spine. You squeeze the fluid out of them, basically. At night, when you're asleep, that fluid goes back into that space. The fluid is going back into tissues all night long. So you need to get some more fluid into your circulatory system. When you go get blood draws, when you get that AM blood draw for your doctor, your blood is usually a little bit more concentrated. Think about what your first morning urine looks like, right? It's pretty concentrated, right? You've dehydrated overnight. You need to replenish that. First thing in the morning, drink 16 ounces of water, okay? Also, that gets your stomach moving, gets your digestive system moving, but at the same time, I've noticed since I've started doing that, I do not have a need to maybe eat something light before I go to the gym. Just drinking the water kind of gets my digestive system moving, but makes me feel like I've eaten something, even though I haven't had anything substantive, just water. It also kind of preps you. I mean, think about if like the first thing you did was to eat a handful of bacon when you woke up, how that would sit in your stomach like a rock. Get your system used to it. Get some water down you, get your digestive system moving, get that fluid back into the vascular space, replenish the fluid that you've lost overnight. Again, that's not necessarily having to do with sleep, just overall health, but since we're talking about it, I thought I'd add it in here. Now, I know what you guys are all thinking. The thing that I've avoided talking about is sleep aids. What can you take to help you sleep? What's out there? First we'll talk about the prescription ones. Okay, so you've got Ambien, you've got Lunesta. I don't even know what all the names of them out there now. Some people do take trazodone to sleep. There's some other things that people take to help them sleep. Those are fine for short term. Those are not for a lifetime. Okay, it's like opiates for pain. Nobody should be taking opiates for pain for more than about 6 weeks. Okay, some people are listening to this, jumping up and down and screaming at me because they say, "No, I take X amount of Norcos or whatever it is every day, and that's what I need because I have all these chronic problems." Hey, man, I hear you, but I'm telling you, from a medical standpoint and from a physiologic standpoint, nobody should be on opiates for more than 6 weeks. They're not a chronic medication. Nobody should be on sleep meds for more than about 6 weeks. Okay, they're not for a life or lifestyle. You just shouldn't be doing it. Okay, I had a lot of problems sleeping, going on deployment, coming back from deployment, going on deployment, coming back from deployment, working shifts in the ER. So there was a couple of years there where I needed to use sleep aids a lot to sleep, and I had to just basically push them aside because you can't do that all the time. I still keep, I do have a prescription for Lunesta. If I'm working a row of deep nights in the ER or something of that, or I'm having to go to a shoot somewhere and move across time zones, every once in a while, that's something that you have to do. And that's fine, but you shouldn't be, as part of your normal, every 30 days, you shouldn't be going to refill a 30-day prescription, especially if you're not doing shift work. If you're working a normal 9 to 5 or whatever it is, no, absolutely not. You should not be chronically on prescription sleep meds. It's the wrong answer. A lot of people take Benadryl. They take whatever it is, ZQuil or just over-the-counter Benadryl, whatever it is. I know it makes you feel drowsy and it makes you feel like you're falling asleep sooner, but I can tell you that studies have shown it does interfere with you reaching what they call REM sleep. So the deep sleep that you really need, that your brain really needs, oftentimes it will restrict you from reaching that. So again, not something that you should make a habit of by any means. I am an advocate of using a lot of natural stuff. And I'm gonna go into that right now. So there's plenty of over-the-counter stuff out there that is 100% natural that you can get if you just want to get it prepackaged. I'm gonna give you a list of generally what I have found works for me and how I think you should take it and the general mechanism of why it works. So let's go through that. I talked about your naturally occurring melatonin. And again, melatonin naturally occurs in your body, and it basically tells your body when it's nighttime, when it's time to go to sleep. 10 milligrams of melatonin taken within about 30 minutes to an hour of when you want to go to sleep. Magnesium. Most people do not get enough magnesium, quite frankly, and it's exceedingly rare to find anybody outside of a hospital setting whose magnesium is high. Usually if somebody's magnesium is high, it's because we've given them too much in the hospital through an IV. If you have normal kidney function, it's I've never seen anybody come in off the street that when I drew their labs, they had abnormally high magnesium. So almost everybody needs to be taking it anyway. I take 250 milligrams about 30 minutes before I go to sleep. Magnesium acts as a muscle relaxant, specifically as a smooth muscle relaxant. So you have two types of muscles in your body, skeletal muscle and smooth muscle. Smooth muscle is also the involuntary muscles in your body. So you find those in your intestines. You also find them in your blood vessels and in your capillaries. So relaxing those smooth muscles increases blood flow to a lot of the areas of your body, specifically areas of your brain that are going to help you sleep. And magnesium also has a calming effect. It works on the nervous system in such a way that it kind of calms you down. There's certain types of seizures and seizure conditions that will give high dose magnesium for. Also magnesium in certain cardiac conditions, when the cardiac muscle becomes overexcited or overexcitable, we'll give magnesium to counteract that. We also give magnesium to asthmatics. And again, this is because the smooth muscles in the terminal airways of your lungs, it will relax and help you get deep breaths and breathe a lot better. So magnesium just overall, I always tell people, if you've been to one of my Sheepdog courses, at the end of the day, when everybody's been beat up on the mat and then beat up on the range, I say, hey, go home tonight, take 250 milligrams of magnesium, and And if you feel you need it, also take 600 to 800 milligrams of Motrin. And I'm not going to talk about Motrin here because we're specifically talking about sleep meds, but magnesium before you go to bed, great medicine. I can't emphasize it enough. It also works for headaches. I've cured migraine headaches with magnesium. So take 250 milligrams right before bed. Valerian root. So a lot of different ways you can get this. I typically will take 300 milligrams. Some studies out there say if you're going to take it as a lifestyle thing for a long period of time, greater than 6 weeks, you should probably make that 120 milligrams. I'll leave that up to you. I'll say 120 milligrams we know is the safe dose for chronic use. I personally take 300. They're not really sure how valerian root works, but they do think that it increases what we call GABA production. I'm not going to get into the nuts and bolts of that, but basically when we're talking about GABA, we're talking about a substance that's used in your central nervous system. GABA receptors have some interaction with some drug family we call benzodiazepines, also with alcohol. If you think of the relaxation you feel with alcohol, that has to do with GABA. If you think of, if you've ever had Valium or Ativan, the calming effect that has had on you, the anti-anxiety effect that has had, that also has to do with GABA, has to do with the effect on the central nervous system. So many people believe that have looked into this in depth, believe that the valerian root specifically is interacting in some way with probably with increased GABA production, which has that calming effect on your nervous system. And then finally, L-tryptophan. L-tryptophan 200 milligrams is what I take. And you're all probably familiar with that because that is the protein that is in turkey. And that's why after the big Thanksgiving dinner, you feel drowsy because you've overloaded on tryptophan. The way they think tryptophan works is we know that it's a precursor to a lot of substances in your body. Specifically, when it pertains to sleep, it is a precursor to a chemical called serotonin that works in your nervous system. And we think a lot of the way that it works, having to do with sleep, has to do with that, has to do with helping your body make more serotonin. Serotonin may also sound familiar to you. There's a family of antidepressant drugs out there called selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors that help the body keep more serotonin kind of flowing in the system, available for the nerves to use. So L-tryptophan possibly has an effect kind of akin to that. Basically, it just gives you that feeling of drowsiness, calmness, wellness, probably because of the serotonin. Shift work. I want to talk about that very, very briefly, and then I'm going to wrap up here. If you are doing shift work, a couple of words of advice I can give on that. And I work it quite a bit, of course, because I work in emergency medicine and we don't have regular office hours. This, for those of you who do shift work, should be common knowledge to you. You need to always roll forward, never roll back. And what I mean by that is, if I'm working a 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. shift today, I need to be off for at least 12 hours, and preferably, in fact, to make it easier, we'll talk about it. We'll say we're working 8-hour shifts. Let's say I'm working 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. today, right? Tomorrow, I definitely shouldn't be working some weird like 4 a.m. shift. The earliest I should go in is 12 hours later and the same time I got off today. Preferably, if I'm going to rotate shifts, I need to be rolling forward. So I need to, if I get off at 7 p.m. tonight, I go in at 3 p.m. tomorrow. So tomorrow I'm working the evening shift, or I'm working the night shift. I'm going in at 7 p.m. Always be rolling to the right. Always be rolling forward, never rolling back. Okay? I shouldn't work a day shift today. I shouldn't get off, or let's say I worked an evening shift today. Say I worked like a 3 to midnight. I shouldn't work 3 to midnight today and then the 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. shift tomorrow. Okay? Shouldn't work that way. Now, if I'm going to work the 3 to midnight today, then tomorrow I should be working the later shift, right? I should be going in at probably 7 p.m., the 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., or the 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift. So rolling, that's what I mean when I say rolling forward. When you're starting out nights, when you're making a transition going into that night shift, this is something that has worked well for me, is let's say that I'm going on night shifts on Tuesday night. Monday night, I stay up as late as I possibly can. You know, I watch Netflix, whatever it might be. I stay up as late as I can, past midnight. I go to bed and I sleep late. I don't set an alarm. All right. I got my blackout curtains closed. And that's the time they use. A lot of times, even I'll maybe even keep the sleep mask and the earplugs on the nightstand. Because if my wife is getting up and doing her normal thing in the morning, I want to sleep past that. And I'm going to double down on my noise and light barrier. And then I'll get up when I get up at some point, kind of late in the morning. I'll wake up, decide, hey, I'm hungry. I feel like getting some breakfast. I'm going to get up. I'll get up. I typically won't work out on that day. That's a day I just kind of have to give a bye to my normal workouts. I'll get up. I'll eat some breakfast. I'll get some stuff done. I'll make sure that everything is ready for me to go to work that night, because that's one thing that'll definitely keep you awake if you think all your stuff's not ready to go, right? So I'll make sure everything, my scrubs are laid out that I'm going to wear. My work backpack is packed and ready to go. If I'm going to take food in that night, I've got that ready. Everything's ready to go. And then at some point in the afternoon, I'll take a little after lunch nap for probably a couple hours. I won't plan on how much that's going to be. I'm going to lay down and I'm going to sleep till I'm not tired anymore. And then I get up, I take a shower, maybe do some light stretching, not a full workout, but I'll do something to kind of get my blood pumping a little bit. And I really start getting myself going. The challenge of that day is, because I'm used to getting my caffeine every day kind of early on, is avoiding that afternoon caffeine headache because I didn't get the caffeine that day. So oftentimes when I get up at breakfast, I'll preempt that by taking a little bit of Tylenol to kind of stave off that headache, because I want to wait and not drink any caffeine at all until right around dinner time, right when I'm getting ready to go in for that night shift. So that's how I prep for going into nights. Now, let's say I work a string of 4 nights or whatever it is. Now I'm coming out the back end of nights and I want to recalibrate myself to go back into a normal routine. The way I do that is I come home from that last night. And, oh, by the way, when you're on nights, again, the same rules apply. Don't be pounding caffeine the whole night to stay awake, okay? You need to have caffeine before midnight, but no caffeine after. Everything applies. You know, the early morning has now become your afternoon. So all the tips that I gave you before, those now apply on nights to that early morning. As I'm coming off that last night, I'll go home, I'll eat something light, I'll lay down and I'll take a nap for just a couple hours. Then I'll get up, and usually it's late morning, early afternoon at that point, and I'll drink some coffee. I'll drink some coffee and I'll eat something, and then I'll find something to do, something to occupy my time for the rest of the day, whether that's sitting and watching TV, whatever it might be. But I'll do something to occupy my brain and to occupy my time. And then I'll go to bed early that night. Typically about coming off of that night, I get what I call a zombie afternoon, so it's not real productive. And then I go to bed at 8 o'clock that night. And usually that's enough to get me right back. Coming off of nights and getting back on days usually doesn't take a whole lot for me. I'm going to tell you, as I've gotten older, I absolutely hate working nights, and my body is not as elastic as it used to be going back and forth. So I despise nights. All right. So here's your takeaways from everything that I talked about today. And I hope that at least some of this was new to you. You heard at least 1 or 2 things in here that you're going to be able to try and work into your own routine. So here's your takeaways. Sleep hygiene. Remember that it starts the morning before. Get up, wash your face, get some exercise, eat right, get plenty of water. So all the normal things you do to be a sheepdog: eat right, exercise, plenty of water. All right. If you're doing that during the day, that's going to help with your overall sleep. Avoid caffeine in the afternoon. Can't emphasize that enough. Start preparing for sleep and preparing your routine, preparing the house 2 to 4 hours out. Turning the lights down, calming yourself, having that light snack if you need to, getting yourself in the mindset, turning off your devices, and decreasing your stimulation, getting ready to sleep. Set up a comfortable sleep environment, all right? You're proud of how your car looks, you wax it, every other week. You vacuum it out. You have the leather interior, whatever it might be. Be just as proud of your sleeping space, okay? Set up your sleeping space so it's comfortable for you. And remember that bed is for two things and two things only: sleep and intimacy. Avoid the clock. Don't have a clock anywhere that you can see it. I can't emphasize that enough. It's going to give you a mental distraction and a reset that is going to totally mess up your sleep routine. And finally, take the natural supplements that I advised: melatonin, magnesium, valerian root, and tryptophan. Avoid long-term use of prescription-grade sleep aids, and use the mental distraction techniques that I described. Hopefully they'll work for you. If not, I'm sorry. If you find something that works better, hit me up on social media or shoot me an email. Let me know what that was. I'd love to share it with our listeners. Hope you got something out of this, everybody. We're right on time. So I'm going to close today with a quote from the late dramatist Thomas Dekker, who said, "Sleep is that golden chain that ties health and our bodies together." Remember that, everybody. And until next time, be a sheepdog.
You have been listening to the Sheepdog Project. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Sheepdog Response. The views expressed on this podcast are those of the individual and do not represent any larger entity, public or private.